Welcome to the Natural Products Marketer podcast. I'm your host, Tina Maddock. On this podcast, you'll hear from manufacturers, retail owners and operators, and other business experts that will help you grow your business so you can serve more people and change more lives. I really wanted to talk to you because you went to Soho. And
I did go to Soho.
You were the speaker at Soho.
It was fantastic. It was an honor. I think Ryan called me, and I did a talk at one of his stores in Florida.
Yeah.
And he called and was like, "Hey, did great, and I think you'd be a good speaker." And I was honored. So, got down there and did the breakfast event. I think on Friday to kind of kick off the show, which was super exciting, and we had a full room. So.
Yeah, tell me, I heard a lot of great things from retailers who attended the talk. So tell me a little bit about what you felt in the room, what kind of questions you got from people after you presented, and just tell me a little bit about what was going on there.
Yeah, I think, the title of the talk really was getting back to the roots of our industry, Tina. So, I think I've been in the industry since I was a kid, 15 years old. And so that's dating me. I can't even do the math anymore at my age. I think it's like 36 years. And so I was kind of telling that story and sitting down and really getting into the soul, into the heart, and the roots of the industry and what this industry was built on, which was, education and, like you said, passion. And, I asked the audience, and I do this all the time. I travel around and I visit hundreds of health food stores, a quarter as I travel across the country. And I always sit down with the owners and the buyers and I say, hey, what are your challenges? What are you looking for? In your business? And, those challenges, they were echoed in that segment. They were the challenges of, all the changes that have occurred with, the POS and the systems and the data management and then also, you have a whole new level of marketing and advertising to try and bring new customers in the door. And you have a lot of the brands that have been so loyal to the industry for many years, they're have been purchased, they've been sold, they've been, and their paths changed, and they're going into a lot of the, mass market stores and stuff like that. And so independent retailers really need to be on the top of their game to be able to compete. And, there's one area where they can compete and win, and that's on being involved in the community and winning in education. Mm-hmm. And that's what I took from it, Tina.
Yeah, we hear that so much. Like, people continue to go to the independent retail stores because they can get recommendations. They can get educated on what is the thing that I'm about to take and where's it sourced. It's like part of that to me too, their differentiation is picking the right products to be on the shelves so that it's something that consumers can trust, that the label is what it says it is, and that there aren't any contaminants, heavy metals, those sorts of things that are in the product. And I think the independent retailers have become the gatekeeper of products that are worth spending money on because they have efficacy for all the reasons that I just talked about.
100%. And, I announced in the room there too, I said True Grace is starting a new campaign in 2026. Really, it's multifaceted, but the main campaign is going to be read the label, Tina.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You think about this. Independent retailers, they're bombarded with, I do a lot of Teams calls, and I talk to some category managers, and I look, behind their desk and their shelf, Tina, and there's like 250 products. But that's where, you see the retailers, they look in the back and they're getting so inundated with products. And a lot of times they're just looking at like the front of the pack or the fancy marketing and, a lot of these things. And they're not actually turning over and diving into and looking at the ingredients and the efficacy. And are they using clinically studied ingredients? Mm-hmm. That's another thing that, at True Grace, our tagline is meaningful ingredients at effective doses. And we focus a lot on clinically studied ingredients. Yeah. And, a lot of retailers, they either don't dive in to that and see it, and it's all kind of the marketing, and and we're trying to remind them that. And then the other thing, the other part of that campaign in 2026 is we're redefining on education. So
Mhm.
our whole theme at True Grace is excellence in education. And as CEO, I'm putting that through my whole company, that I want excellence in education coming from True Grace. I want to be the source where retailers can look to, for
Mhm.
something that's for their staff to be able to educate themselves on all these clinically studied ingredients and innovations and different things like that. So we're going to be ramping up in 26 for the independent retailers and coming out with a platform that they can use themselves and their
Mhm.
associates and new hires and all that stuff. So we're going to
That's
double
awesome.
down where the industry's void is.
Yeah, thank you for doing that and saying that, because here's something that we've found too, that the retailers will be very honest about it. The products that their floor people are trained on are the ones that gets old. So the fact that you guys are investing in this just means that's going to be better for the retailer, the consumer, and for you, because that's the product people are going to focus on. And so I love that you guys are doing that. And one other thing that sort of came up for me while you were just talking was read the label is great. And can you trust the label is a whole other question. And I think it's a big one because, Amazon will let anyone sell anything on that platform. And again, reading the label, I think, is the beginning. The second thing is, do you trust the manufacturer? Are there third party tests that are going into this? How do we know that we're giving our consumers good products? And I think you guys do a lot to help people understand, like, we are giving you what is on that label in that packet.
Yeah. And I talked about that in our, and I'm honest with the retailers. I talked to the retailers about one of our products, our probiotic. We're the only probiotic, Tina, I believe, in North America. You can fact check that for me, but we're the only probiotic in North America carrying a third party seal from Purity IQ, an independent
Mhm.
testing lab in Guelph, Ontario. Check them out. Your listeners got to check them out. They're amazing. They do mushrooms, they do probiotics, they do DNA identity, all this stuff. But they actually can test and have tested our probiotic, every batch, every lot. So
Hmm.
I pay around $6,000 per lot, right, to have this test and that seal on my bottle. And what it says is that, hey, we've done the test. Not only are these specific strains that are clinically studied, and referenced on PubMed, not only are they in there, but they're in there at the amount they say they're in there.
Hmm.
And we actually got a letter from them saying that, hey, congratulations, over the last 3 years, you've had, like, I don't know how many lots it was, 6, 7, 8 lots, where every lot, Tina, had a 99%, or I think it was 98.7% batch to batch consistency, meaning every capsule in every lot over 3 years was on that label claim.
That's saying a lot. And, we are going to interview them on the podcast. We've
Oh,
scheduled
you
that.
are?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So,
awesome.
yeah, I'm excited.
Dilio, are you going to email? You're going to talk to Dilio?
Yes.
Awesome. I love her. She's great. She's a dear friend of mine.
Yeah, she's great. And I can't wait to have her on the podcast. She's coming up soon. So that'll be
Great.
great for all the listeners to hear. But I think, sometimes the retailers talk about price, and that it's difficult for them to maintain margin and have the consumer pay a certain price level. Some of the things that you're talking about, you're spending extra money getting that proof that what is on the label is in the package. And I think the consumer can be educated around that there's extra value there, and that people don't have to worry as much about squishing their margins down to be more competitive with another brand that's more affordable but doesn't have all of the process in it that a brand like yours has.
And that's third-party testing. And another thing that we do, we use a company called Alchemist Labs out of Southern California, and they're testing all of our our mushrooms, and they're testing our fish oil to make sure that it has the level of EPA and DHA. And we actually put those logos on our bottle. And
Mm-hmm.
here's where you have to be careful, Tina, is because now, and I knowing this now as a owner of a company, and I'm involved in all the regulatory and formulations and all that stuff, and I see some companies go out there and it says on the front of the label or the side or the back, whatever, it's a third party tested. And that's all it says. It's
Yeah.
like, what am I supposed to trust you? I mean, like, well, there's no regulatory around that. I can
Right.
say that it's third party tested. How many times is it third party tested? Is it every lot? What are you testing for? And the retailers need to ask these questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ask me. I want you to ask me.
Right.
Because if you're asking me, that means that you care about it. And if you care about it, I may not have the answer that day, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to get you what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a call yesterday. You mentioned price. It's so funny. I had a call with a
Mm-hmm.
retailer yesterday, and she calls and she's like, "Well, we really love your Maltese, but you're more expensive than this other whole food based brand, and you're more expensive than this other whole food based brand, and you're more." And I overcame the objection in
Yeah.
30 seconds. It wasn't a big deal, but here's what I want to. I came up with an analogy last night. I was sitting on the couch. I was thinking about that conversation. But Tina, do you have an iPhone?
Yeah.
You do. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Most people probably do. Listening to this, right?
Yep.
iPhones. The new iPhone just came out. The iPhone 17. What is that thing, Tina? But 13, 14, $1,500.
Yeah.
We don't bat an eye,
Oh, right. I
right?
know.
We don't bat an eye. Hey, I want the iPhone 17. I'm going to stand in line for 9 hours to pay $1,300 for a phone. Okay. Now, Tina, they still sell flip phones that you can get.
Did not know that.
They still, yeah, you can go into Verizon, AT&T, and they still sell the little phones. You can get them for $79. Now, Tina, they both call people.
Mm-hmm.
They both text people. But what do you think, when somebody comes and says, "Oh, I can't sell your iPhone because this, phone over here is $79.99."
Yeah. No.
That's the difference, guys, between True Grace and a lot of the other whole food based multis out there. You can't compare.
Yeah.
When you pull them off the shelf and they're $23.99 and ours is $29.99. There's no MENAQ7, clinically studied MENAQ7 K2 at an efficacious dose of 60 micrograms. They have none.
Mm-hmm.
We have 60 micrograms. We're at True Grace. We're using things like clinically studied ergoactive ergothioneine. That product alone sells for $30 a month, just if you were to buy 5 milligrams of it. You get where I'm going, Tina? It's like,
Yeah.
you can't just come down to price. You have to look at value. And so that's where we're trying to tell people, we're using fruiting body mushrooms that are third party tested by Alchemist Labs. We're using MENAQ7K2. We're using, fermented glycoprotein bound nutrients. These are all extra steps and measures that we take
Mm-hmm.
that bring the quality up.
Yeah. I mean, and part of this is educating the consumer, but I also think the consumer's more educated than they used to be because TikTok and whatever, and there's plenty of misinformation out there, but they have some knowledge around some of these things that you're talking about. So just highlighting them might be enough for many people to say, okay, this is worth it because it has these items in it. I mean, when you start talking about fermented, those ingredients are important in the conversation around perimenopause, which is blowing up online right now. And so just highlighting that ingredient alone might be enough to be like, oh, this is the one, if I'm a woman, that I would want to take over another brand. So I do think sometimes it's just highlighting the difference. And we've talked about things that really work, comparison charts, this versus other brands. And then also being able to have educated conversations with a consumer about this. So again, we go back to then the team on the floor needs to be educated about all of these things as well.
Yeah, and I think the team on the floor, and that's key. And here's the problem: is you get some of these brands out there that are owned by the big, who they are. Your listeners know. I don't have to reiterate. I don't want to do that, but they, people come into the store and be like, "Oh, do you have this, whole food based multivitamin?" And then what we do as retailers is we take them over the shelf. We say, "Here it is," and then we walk away.
Mm-hmm.
And what we need to train the staff to do is when they come in and they say, "I'm looking for XYZ brand." "Oh, it's a great brand. What made you interested in it?"
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, well, I saw it on TikTok." "Oh, you saw it on TikTok. Okay, great. It's a great brand, but some of the things that they're missing in here are things like, the Menacue 7K2, and, it's not non-GMO, or it's, not fermented, all of those things, those highlights that we can engage the staff at the floor level to say, oh, and then, 99% of the time, Tina, the people are going to be like, "Oh, I'll
Mm-hmm.
take that brand. Is that what you take?"
Yeah.
And they walk out.
We talk a lot about how important it is for the floor team to start the conversation with what brought you in today. Just a simple open ended question like that, it might still elicit the same answer of, I'm looking for this brand. But actually, when you start the conversation with what brought you in today, or did you come in to solve something specific? Are you looking to reach a specific goal? When you sort of um, do those questions a little bit differently at the very start of the conversation, then you become collaborative in helping them solve a problem versus, I want a brand, I want this item, which can also happen. You can still point them in that same direction, but then you've got a bunch of resources you can point them to in the store, which leads to better service for them because they're trying to solve a problem, and higher baskets for you because, hey, you don't just need a multivitamin, you're actually looking for something specific related to what, because you're trying to solve a problem. And then, oh, well, that's great. And do you know this makes it even better when you pair these two things together? You start having really good conversations that lead the consumer to get what they need instead of just what they came in the store thinking that they needed.
100%. And that's the education. That's the excellence in
Mm-hmm.
education that we're going to be striving for. And then you look at some brands too, where they'll come in and they'll ask for a specific brand, or they see it on social media and they see these other things. I had a retailer the other day. We have an electrolyte product, and
Mm-hmm. I
you
use
know,
that.
oh, you do? Oh, awesome, Electromag. Yeah, it's
Great,
amazing. We just
grapefruit is my favorite.
awesome. And then we just launched pink lemonade, so it's coming out
Yeah.
here shortly too. But what's interesting with that is, we launched this SKU. It's skyrocketing in sales. I mean, everywhere it's selling. It's just like top. But there's some competition out there, and there's some, big competition out there, and there's a lot of mass market type competition, in that realm. And, you look at it and, it's the retailers. I don't know. I mean, you have some of the things where there was some media centered around exactly what you said, which you guys, your listeners can look this stuff up, but is what's in there, is what's in there what they're saying is in there? Is there
Mm-hmm.
other things in there? Is there testing, all of those things? And it's been brought out, that it's not. And, the other thing then is, like, it's not non-GMO. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to mention the brand's name, but it's not non-GMO. It's not using organic natural flavors. It's, in Target and, you can get an 8-pack in Target for $9.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, Tina, you tell me, what do independent retailers want? Do they want us to take all of our money and put it into TikTok? Or you guys have standards that you want us to meet, which is non-GMO, which is organic, which is, no other filler ingredients
Mm-hmm.
in an electrolyte product, and you don't want us in mass, then What do we have to do else, Tina, to get independent retailers to double down on Electromag or True Grace? And I'm using that as a whole industry standard because there's other great brands out there too that are doing what we're doing.
Yep.
What is it going to take? There's another big brand, whole food based brand that just launched into, a massive retailer across the country, and they're advertising it on their social media like crazy. Um, and it's convenience, Tina. The customers are going to those stores every day,
Hmm.
and if they see it there, why do I have to make the extra trip to the independent health food store? Here it is, right here, and it's half the price. It's like,
Yeah.
what do we do?
Yeah, well, I mean, a couple of things that I think about that. I don't think that independents are talking enough about things like that, non-GMO, organic, and this is across the board in different products. I mean, essential oils, a number of products you can really highlight that on. And if you think about something like the electrolyte category, that's typically for people who are very in tune with I want to put the best in my body because I want high performance, or I'm trying to solve a health issue, so I'm trying to put clean, good products in my body. And again, I'm just saying, like, highlighting or a simple comparison chart goes a long way. Having that on your website, having it like hanging on a shelf so that people can take a look. And it doesn't need to call out a different brand. It can just say other brands, this brand versus other brands.
Leading brand A, leading brand B. You can draw
Yeah.
conclusions. I mean,
You
it's
don't
not.
have to point fingers. It can be really easy, but the people that are buying that specific product, other sports nutrition categories, they care about that being pure, organic, and that they're getting in their body because they're trying to do something for performance or some sort of health issue. So I think, just highlighting things like that is a big deal. And
Exactly, and yeah,
and people are
100%.
constantly also like, what do I put on social media? There you go. Super easy. They're always like, what's the content? What do we do? Super easy to highlight brand differences. And I think it's also a differentiator for stores. When they start to say, this is why we carry brands, you can start to trust the store more that they're only going to bring you what it has some efficacy around it for the health goals that people are trying to solve. I think that's when you win, and pull people into the store, even though they've got to buy some other essentials in another place. But one of the things that we're talking about right now is highlighting essentials that you do have. I mean, many of the stores carry toilet paper or coffee or something else that people buy every day, and they are buying it somewhere. Why not be buying it from you? Because they're loyal, you're local, you're in their community. This does get back to that. If you're not in the community, then it's harder to make that pull in for
A hundred
essentials.
percent. A hundred
But
percent.
but getting in the community, if you're seen regularly as contributing to that community, man, you're going to pull people over for simple things.
Absolutely, and that's what's key is and it's interesting you talk about quality and some of those things in non-GMO. Like that's what this industry was built out. I was at Infra, the show, a couple months ago, and they brought up those kind of pioneers on
Hmm.
stage of the non-GMO movement, and these are that's what the industry was built on.
Yep.
Is these types of pioneers and thought leaders and missionaries and making change and standing true to their values
Hmm.
when they were up against it. And look at what happened 10, 15, 20 years later, Tina. I mean, that's the root of the industry. And
Hmm.
that's what I want to get back to. And it's interesting because I was formulating this electrolyte product, Electromag, and I went out to this pretty good sized chain in California, and their quality standards are like, I mean, the independents have high quality standards, but this one, Tina, I was like, you mean I got to do what to get a product in here? And I had to send them every bit of certificate of analysis, of documentation, of not just the final product, Tina, but every ingredient in the product, where it was sourced,
Hmm.
what processing aids went into making every single one of those ingredients, because they had a list a mile long of banned substances and things in their store. And I said, okay. And I took it back and I went to my contract manufacturer. I said, boom, here, can you do this?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we can do this, but you're gonna pay more. It's gonna cost you. Your cogs are gonna be a little bit higher, And I'm like, okay. And so we did it. We delivered, and it's now the number one selling electrolyte in that chain. And you look at that, and you we have to know and ask the questions. There's a couple new brands that just launched, Tina, right? In the
Hmm.
space, in the whole food realm and stuff like that. And we don't even know who the owner is. Like, who's behind the company? Ask those questions. Who's the owner? When somebody comes in, and I talk to independent retailers all the time, and it's like, Bruce and, Ryan and Brian and all these, the retailers in Florida, and, Joe Nolan at Good Harvest and Jimbo and, all these stores across the country. I have their cell phones and the personal relationships. It's like, who owns True Grace? Christy Hall. Oh, I
Hmm.
know her husband, Brian. I got a cell right here. You got a question? You don't get that with anyone else.
Yeah.
And that's one of the key things. And a funny story with these contract manufacturers, with knowing that and asking those questions, because a lot of these companies use contract manufacturers for their product, right?
Hmm.
Ask who they are, you know, in true transparency. And I was, actually, I've never been fired in my career, Tina. I've never had the feeling of being fired, thank goodness. But I was fired 9 months ago.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I was fired. So we had this contract manufacturer that we were doing some work with, and we were always having problems with them. And I got the phone call one day, and you know what they said, Tina? They said, you know what? True Gray standards, their quality standards, are just too high for us to meet.
Ooh.
So we can't do business with you anymore. And I, I was like, excuse me?
Yeah.
Our quality standards are too high that you're firing us? I got fired 9 months ago. Um, and we since moved on and partnered with some bigger and stronger and buttoned up supply chain and contract manufacturers in some areas where I apply. I had the FDA come in here, Tina, like a year
Oh,
ago. I got to tell
really?
you that story. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
hilarious. Okay, so I had the FDA come in. I'm sitting at this desk, Tina. Okay, it's my beautiful office here in Pewaukee. I don't know if this is video, people can see it, or if it's just audio. But I'm out in Lake Country in Wisconsin, beautiful area, and three black SUVs pull up, Tina, like right by my window here, and I'm
This is like
like,
from a movie that
I
doesn't seem like
know,
the real, what the FDA would come looking like.
I know. I'm like, what the heck? And I'm like, that's weird. Three black SUVs, and they pull in the parking lot, and then I'm sitting here, and my door is right there. Honest to God, Tina. They walk in. They don't knock. They walk in. Hold up. We're here for a surprise audit. And I was like, awesome. I did. I said, I wasn't nervous. I said, this is my time to shine. I've been waiting for this moment for 3 years, Tina. And they came in and came into my office here. I got our COO and our director of R&D and education regulatory all on the Zoom right away. I knew exactly what to do. Opened up the filing cabinets, have at it. And they sat here, Tina, from 8 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday till 5 o'clock Tuesday night. We're back on Wednesday at 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock Tuesday night. And then Thursday, they were back at 8 in the morning until 1:30. 8 hours. I had to order lunch in. I had to sit in a chair. They went through everything. You're saying third-party tested purity IQ.
Hmm.
Can you verify each lot and batch and pull up this? They went through everything. And at the end, you know, sat there and they closed the books and the blah blah blah. And I said, so what's the thing here? And they're like, well, you'll get a letter in the mail, or you'll get blah blah
Thanks.
blah blah
Yeah.
blah. And then because they see if you have citations or any of that. Tina, she says to me, she says, I just want to let you know. I've been doing this for 3 years. I've been with the FDA for X amount of years. I've been doing this for 3 years in this space. I wish every company was as buttoned up as True Grace.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
She closed her book. She left. Zero citations, Tina. That's what you want as an independent retailer, right? And
Yep.
but that takes money, and that takes a lot of expenses with the testing and the quality and the regulatory, and you can't trust any of these contract manufacturers. You can't trust them. You got to verify, trust but verify. And that's what we do, because I want the independent retailer, if you're listening, when you put a bottle of True Grace in someone's hand, that's your reputation
Mm-hmm.
at at the core of it, right?
Yep.
And I've been in this industry for 36 years. I love this industry. I love the independent retailers. I'll do anything I can to support them at True Grace and to be that brand that they can trust. That's
Yeah.
us.
So here's something that I think could be useful for the listeners. If they're an independent retailer, before they bring a brand in their store or talk to the ones they already have, what are 5 or 10 things they should be asking every manufacturer?
I think number one is, like who's behind the brand? Who's the owner? That's one of the biggest things. What are the values? What are the mission? What's the values in the mission, in the guiding principles, in the formulation? That's probably the first thing I would ask is who's behind it? And what are their formulations, philosophies? What is their mission? What is their guiding principle? Because the first thing I would do as a business owner, if I owned an independent health food store, is I would want to align with partners that share my values and mission,
Yep.
right? And we forget to do that. If I had somebody come and say, "Tell me, Jim, how does your brand align with my mission and values?" Okay, good. Well, it checks that box. Great. And then the next thing is the formulation philosophy, like I talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And then diving into, what is your omni-channel strategy
Mm.
is a big one,
Mm-hmm.
right? And, because a lot of brands, are focused solely on, this is what happens. I know this all too well. Okay. You have to be careful as an independent retailer, because a lot of these brands have been D2C, direct to consumer. They put a ton of money into the TikTok and into the Instagram, and time and time again, they spend. I was talking to somebody yesterday. There's one brand where they were spending $1 million a month on meta advertising.
Yeah.
$1 million a month, and they had a 3 ROAS, 4 ROAS. I mean, it was a printing press of money,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you know what the value of the company was? Nothing,
Yeah.
because they didn't have a retail presence.
Mm-hmm.
And these companies that want to come in and buy companies and look at all these different things or invest in companies, they want a brand that has that's well balanced and has a fair pricing strategy and all of those things across the board. And so I would ask that question, what is your
Mm-hmm.
omni strategy? Are you trying to, because then a lot of these brands now, they go into the retailers and say, oh, we need to get into the retailers. We need, because this is, to do this, we need to do that, kind of thing. We didn't do that at True Grace. Like our omni-channel, our foundation is brick and mortar, is health
Mm-hmm.
food stores, because we're on a mission we're proud supporters of regenerative agriculture, and there's a lot of things that we do to support regenerative agriculture outside of True Grace that your listeners could take a deep dive on and take a look at. My wife's family foundation sponsored the white paper at Rodale Institute to create the standard for regenerative agriculture. There's a lot of things that we've done there behind the scenes to do that. But the regenerative agriculture movement and a lot of the non-GMO movement, a lot of these movements, those were changed by pioneers in the industry that were feet on the health food store, independent health food store floor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we want to support at True Grace. And that's why we have, we offer the same pricing strategy across all. And I was talking to a retailer yesterday in Ohio, and she said, "Oh, I'm priced at this," and I'm like, "That's great. You're priced below our Amazon price. That's what I want." I
Mhm.
want somebody to come in and say, "Oh, Tina, this is more expensive on Amazon. Can I please buy
Yeah.
it at your store, Tina?"
Yeah. And people are looking up. So I used to hear this from retailers, that people would come in and they would Amazon shop while they're in the store to see if that same brand is
A
on there
hundred
and doing
percent,
pricing.
hundred
And I
percent.
was like, I don't know. I don't know. But I saw it in a store the other day, electrolytes specifically.
Oh,
They were going
interesting.
online to look and they were like, ah, it's cheaper here. Let's just get this. And I was like, good job.
That's true, Grace. I priced it on Amazon at MSRP.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I'm trying to tell the retailers, and I give retailers a lot of discounts and promotions
Hmm.
and different things like that. And they pass it on, which is great. I
Yeah.
love that they do that. But you also, that promote us more
Hmm.
because it's in your store. It's less expensive. It's not in the Targets. It's not in the Walgreens. It's not. We're trying to support this industry.
Yeah.
And so get behind that. So that's another key thing. And then coming back to the third party testing, Tina,
Hmm.
and a lot of companies won't answer it, but like who's your contract manufacturer? Where are you making this? I had you know a, somebody the other day. It was funny. It was a probiotic company, and oh yeah, they're making it right there at their office, and blah blah blah. I'm like, are you sure about that? And oh yeah, they're making it right there, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you sure? Oh yeah, and I'm like, have you been?
Yeah.
Have you seen it with your own eyes? And then she's like, no. And I'm like, you might want to fact check that. Okay. And then when somebody comes to me and they say, Brian, who's your contract manufacturer for your probiotics? I say, Lalamond in Montreal, the second largest probiotic manufacturer in the entire world, who has an actual dedicated institute, Roselle Institute, that does studies on their actual specific strains that they've developed over the course of 100 years that have over 400 studies on them. Do you want to go with me? I'm going in August. You want to come? Tina, you want to come to Montreal and see Lalamond?
I would love
Let's go. Let's
to.
go.
Let's do it.
Yeah. And then, if somebody says it, so that's transparency,
Yeah.
Tina.
Yeah, and
So
I don't understand, like, if someone's not willing to answer that, like, where, who, and how. I don't know how you can trust, right? Like, without someone answering those questions and being transparent about those things, I don't know how you then trust that they're doing what they're saying they're doing.
exactly. And that's the thing. And it happens all the time where, um, you know, uh, you can't trust you can't trust them. You got to verify.
Yeah.
And that's where the third party testing comes in. That's where the proper regulatory testing comes in. That's where, that's why we're so buttoned up at True Grace. And I put that into the DNA of our company. We
Hmm.
invested heavily there up front. And then, so that's one thing. And then another big thing that a lot of stores, retailers, I think, miss the kind of the mark on, or the boat on too, is like, oh, well, so and so brand, Tina, gives me 40 off every day.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I'm very respectful, but I've been doing this for 36 years. I led a big company. I don't know if you know, I led this company called New Chapter, with a fantastic team of people. Not just me. I'm taking hardly any credit for it, but we had a great team, and that company went and skyrocketed, and then sold to Procter and Gamble, and I worked there for 4 years, and blah 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 blah. So, but what we have to be careful of, Tina, is that when somebody's coming in and they're offering you 40% off every day,
Hmm.
they know they have to do that So they build it into their pricing model. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So
And we
they
talk about
say,
that a lot, like having a running thing like that, then the price is not right.
right, and that's where I'm struggling a lot, and I need your help, Tina. Maybe you can help me with this and guide me in the right direction. So if we do the math, okay, um, Tina, let's do the math real quick. I have a product at True Grace, and it's $6.
Mhm.
Okay, that's my MSRP. Okay, now if we take 10% off of $6, Tina, that's 60 cents, right?
Right.
So $6 minus 60 cents is $5.40.
Hmm.
Okay, for widget A.
Right.
Okay, now widget B, Tina, is $10 MSRP, but it's 40% off.
Yeah.
So now 40% off of $10 is $6.
Right.
Which one do you want to buy, Tina? The one that's 40% off at $6 or the one that's 10% off at 540?
Right. Exactly.
Which one?
The 540, the five.
You would think.
Yeah.
You would think so. But
That's
people
not what's
don't.
happening.
People don't. They're like, "Oh my god, this is such an amazing deal. It's 40% off at $6."
Yeah. Do you think there's a little bit of that law of price setting where it's like if you level someone thinking that the value's here, and when you're like, but I'll give it to you for
Oh
this,
god.
and then people think they're getting that much value when really the thing just costs that much, right?
It's unbelievable. And I know what this stuff costs, and I'm kind of speaking out in this industry, and probably not the most well liked guy in the industry, but people, Tina, if somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, Tina, I'm going to give this product to you for free,
Yeah.
and I'm going to give it to you for 90 days, and I'm going to guarantee it. And if it doesn't move, I'm going to take it back and I'm going to ship it back to my warehouse." Do you ever think like, wow, what value does that product have if I have to if I can give it away for free, right? Like if my probiotic, I know what my probiotic costs, Tina,
Hmm.
a bottle, and what that purity IQ testing per bottle is, and the fact that I'm using a patented CSP bottle that protects it from moisture, light, and oxygen, and that
Yep.
I'm using patented digestive resistant capsules, and I'm using clinically studied strains. If somebody comes and asks me for my probiotic for free,
Right.
you know what I say, Tina? I say, you know
Impossible.
what? I say, you know what, Tina? With all due respect, it doesn't seem like our relation or we're aligned.
Right.
I can't give free product. I'm sorry. I have to walk away,
Yeah.
right? Because we're conditioned as humans now at the retailers that it has to be free fill, that it has to be, these massive deals. And, I hear it all the time. There's another big brand out there and the retailers hate it. I know you do. They come in and they say, okay, well, we're launching 18 new products. We're going to give you 40% off. And then if you don't take these 18 products at this discount, you're going to
Mhm.
lose your discount on these other 22 products. And then I've gone into retailers and I've said, hey, you brought in all that product. It just launched last month.
Mhm.
And Tina, she had it on a clearance rack
Oh
for
no.
70% off,
Yeah.
the whole stack. And I said to the lady, I said, with all due respect, I was like, this just launched. You just brought it in. It just launched a month ago. She's like, they forced me to take it.
Oh yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't get my discount on anything else. I didn't want it. So as soon as it came in, I immediately put it on a clearance rack.
Oh wow.
I'm like, I said, what? That's what we're at right now? And
That's
here I come
interesting.
hat in hand.
Yeah.
Here I come hat in hand and being like, hey, we'll buy one, buy two, buy three, buy 144, Tina. I don't care. I'll give you the same discount. What am I doing wrong, Tina? Tell me.
No, I mean, look, there are strategies that you can use for short periods of time to do things that I think, we all do tests to see like what works and what doesn't. But if it's consistent across the board, then I do think there's a pricing issue. And things that we've found before are when you just lower the price and like this is the price, you get higher volume and higher than you would have gotten doing that old discount strategy at higher margins because you're not like pulling discounts here to push discounts there. So you
Hmm.
end up with a lot more money in the end when because the consumer is savvy around pricing. And so when you inflate it to pull it down, then they're just going to wait until you pull it down or expect that you're always going to offer 30%, 40%, whatever it is.
Which they are now, and that's the new floor,
Yeah.
and that's where, I remember back in the day, as a 16-year-old kid working in a health food store in Cleveland, Ohio. I forget what the product. It was like, remember when shark cartilage? I don't know if you're too
Oh my
young to
gosh.
remember, but
Yes.
you remember
Yeah.
shark cartilage, right? I won't go into all the specifics on what they said it did, but
Yeah.
there was books out there, and Tina, I was a 16-year-old kid. I had working in the health food store at the register on a Saturday, and the guy had it stacked behind the register because it was selling for $100 a bottle, and this was 36 years ago.
Yeah.
Remember?
Hmm.
Nobody batted an eye. I was selling, 24 a day.
Yeah. Yes. And I've seen other products come through like that. So it's very interesting that you've been in the industry for so long that you've seen like trends come
Seen them
through.
all.
Yeah.
Not
And
all. I mean,
well,
36 years of trends.
you've seen a while, right? Of trends that are coming through. So I speak to that a little bit, the trends versus like what actually is effective for the consumer. What are you seeing right now?
Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah, I think trends, I spent a lot of time after I left New Chapter, I went to a practitioner brand.
Hmm.
And I went to a pretty big one. It was one of the top three practitioner brands, and had a great time there. And it was amazing, and it was really interesting, Tina, because I had spent so much time on retail, and I knew quite a bit. I was trained by some pretty powerful individuals in formulation and herbalism and stuff like that. But I'll tell you what, Tina, when I went to this company, it was like I was in kindergarten. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, now these are functional medicine doctors and
Hmm.
chiropractors and, naturopathic doctors. And, I like, holy cow, I really got to up my game on the education side of things. Right. And, that's where I learned that, there's trends, there's fads, but, always diving back into the clinical research,
Hmm.
right? For example, Tina, I'll tell you, okay, so like vitamin K2. I said this in my talk. I think myself that vitamin K2 is the most important nutrient. And I may get this wrong. People, please don't take my word for it here, fact check it, but I think the stat is like 80 or 85% of people in America are deficient in K2. I
Hmm.
think. So fact check me, people. Go online and take a look. But think about that, Tina. 85% of people are deficient in K2. K2 is essential for
Hmm.
bone remodeling and shuttling calcium from the arteries into the bone. It need K2 and D3 for the immune system, K2 and D3 for osteoblasts. Osteoblasts build bone and they're K2 dependent or D3 dependent and need K2 to activate it. That whole thing. Very important nutrient.
Hmm.
Okay, so retailer, do the math. Okay, I'm going to give you a second, Mr. and Mrs. Retailer, to pull out your pad and paper. Okay, I want you to write down right now how many customers a day come through your health food store.
Hmm.
Okay, now what I want you to do is write down how many bottles a day of MetaQ7K2 you sell.
Right.
Okay, so if you have 100 people coming in a day, and you're not selling 85 bottles a day, we're missing the mark. Does that make sense, Tina?
Totally. And we talk about things like this all the time. Like, if you are educated, you know that there are products that every single person would find useful and should be taking. And so that is easy to have a conversation with people if you're willing to openly have a conversation about health goals, and they're going to talk to you about something and you're going to say, okay, great. And did you know also that you should be using this product? Here's where you can find it. And having that one conversation, if you're helping them solve a health goal, what we've seen is 80% of people will buy the product that you're recommending as a partner to whatever else they're
100%.
buying.
100%.
If they don't have a health goal or a problem that they're talking to you about, and you're not talking to them about the product solving, still 20% of people will buy it if you
Exactly.
just talk about it. So that's always a way to help the consumer. And we talk about that too, because a lot of people are like, upsell. I can't upsell. That seems fishy, snake oil salesman kind of thing. And I'm like, you're not offering them something that they shouldn't be using. You're actually offering them something that every person needs. It's
Yeah.
really easy,
And the other thing I talk to retailers too. It's like you don't have to sell them to educate them.
right?
You have think about it really as planting a seed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and I tell this all the time when somebody comes in and says, oh, I'm looking for XYZ I'm looking for calcium for this or, whatever for my bone health or cardiovasculars, runs in my family. I'm looking for cayenne for my heart or
Mm-hmm.
niacin, for my, to look at my blood lipids and stuff like that. That's great. Doctor told you to come in and take niacin. Boom. Here you go. Niacin helps with blood lipids and lipoprotein A and, blah, 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 blah. Have you heard of K2?
Right.
No, my doctor didn't mention K2. Go home and do some research on MENAQ7K2 and the importance of that for your heart and for your bones. Okay, here's your niacin. Okay, go. See you. Love you. Bye. See you next
Mm-hmm.
week. You know what's going to happen, Tina? They're going to come in next week and they're
Yeah.
going to be like, hey, Tina, you told me about that thing. I don't know, it had a M and a K in it. Oh, MENAQ7K2? Yeah. I went home and I did the research and I saw on the website that it can really help with, getting the camp, blah, 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 and I'm probably deficient in it. Yeah, come over here. I got it right over here.
Yeah.
Now you're an expert.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference. And what's great is, the biggest challenge right now with consumers, Tina, is that they're this is a big problem for retailers. So listen up, is pill fatigue.
Yeah.
There's the consumers. We've done analysis on it. It's one of the top 6 complaints, not complaints, but just concerns in regards to taking dietary supplements is
Mm-hmm.
the fear of taking too many pills. And that's why, to your point, Tina, at True Grace, our whole tagline and formulation philosophy, getting back to point 2 of what retailers should ask brands, what is your formulation philosophy? Ours is meaningful ingredients and effective doses. So your consumer doesn't have to worry about taking too many pills. We're the only whole food based multi using MENAQ7K2 at 60 micrograms. So now there's more value there and they
Mm-hmm.
don't have to take as many pills.
Right.
But you need education to get that across, right? So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So many good things. We could talk for a very long time, I think.
we could, we should do another one.
Happy to do it. We'll definitely have you on again. This has been great. Anything that you would love to leave the listeners with? And of course, I want you to talk about how to get in touch with you and your team for bringing you in or talking to you about products that maybe they don't have yet. But anything else you want to leave the independent retailers with? Last thoughts about?
Um, yeah, no, I mean, I think I love you guys. I mean, I sincerely do. True Grace, my wife, Christy, we love you guys. We love your mission. You're our friends. You're our family. We share pictures. A lot of the retailers, that I go across. It's so much joy.
Mm-hmm.
Tina. It's like we go to the retailers and Christy and I, and it's like we're sitting at dinner tables and we're out at their farm, and I mean that's what we enjoy. That's what we love. That's why we started this company. We didn't start this company because of money, or it was a different mission. And we're here for you. And one thing I would ask maybe, Tina, is that just share the message. If you have True Grace, because we're only in 25-30% of stores.
Mm.
That's it. Share the message with a friend and say, hey, we got this True Grace, and they're really, doing this for us and that for us, and give us a plug. That's what we need, to keep the mission moving.
Yeah, that's great. And just while you were talking about their friends and everything, just being at Soho myself, I can't tell you how many retailers came up to hug my neck.
Yeah,
That's
I know.
how much of a family it feels like. So, and if you haven't been to Soho to experience that, definitely go, because it does feel it's such a small, connected network that everyone is so friendly and welcoming and excited to see each other. And I think,
100%.
oh man, learning from other retailers is one of the best things that a retailer can do, because
100%.
they've been through the same experiences that you've been through, and having them have conversation with you and be like, oh, well, when I saw that, I did this, or these are the people I use for this. Perfect place to get to the right manufacturers, to the right even employees. They can help you with just about any problem.
Yeah, and it's your industry, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, you dictate where this industry goes. You dictate what brands do. You dictate. You have the power. True Grace, we don't have it. We have none. You guys have it all. We rely on you. That's the friends and the family, and that's the support, and that's that network. And ask these questions, dive deep, understand who these brands are, and let's get back to the roots of our industry, which was education, which is soul, which is purpose, which is passion, which is integrity, which is, all of those things that this industry was built on.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast. And for everyone else that's listening today, thank you for spending your time with us. And we will see you on the next episode.
Awesome. Thanks, Tina. Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us for the latest episode of the Natural Products Marketer podcast, where we're here to help you grow your business so you can serve more people and change more lives. If you have any questions that have come up during this episode or others, or there's just a retail challenge that you're facing today, I would love for you to reach out to us at info@naturalproductsmarketer.com. We're here to answer questions. But most of all, if you have a question, then another retailer probably also has that question. So we can bring experts onto the podcast to give you the information that you really need. And if you liked what you heard, give us a thumbs up or give us a review on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening today. All right. It was great to see you.